This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, anywhere on the internet, answer them here in video format. Make sure if you want to ask questions on this week's show, next week's show, or any show after that, to make sure you're subscribed and notified so you can be notified when I put the question prompts out on the community page. Now that all of that is said, let's get into the questions, because there are some juicy ones this week, to be honest with you. I had a hard time picking the title for this video because there's so many titleable questions here. Hype the Edit says, QSPN, why did everybody accept Joe Flacco bad play but not Deshaun Watson? In my opinion, Joe has more plays that look amazing downfield, while DW4 seemed to be more of a game manager. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that assessment of things, but if you're wondering why people had an easier time appreciating what Joe Flacco brought to the table while being critical of what Deshaun Watson brought to the table, I mean, it comes into a number of things, right? The first thing is expectation. Joe Flacco came in here as a street free agent in the late part of the season. The bar was literally on the ground for him. If he did anything above what DTR was doing at the time, we would have been pretty happy with Joe Flacco. And that's what happened, right? The bar for Deshaun Watson is of a franchise quarterback, is of somebody who's getting paid $230 over 5 years, somebody who should be, in the top 10 of quarterbacks. That's the bar that Deshaun Watson is going to be judged on, because he's earned that bar, right? He's played that well. He's still in his prime. People expect him to play that well. That's the burden of expectation he carries that comes with that check that he cashes. So on one level, and that's probably the main level, that's why a lot of people will be willing to accept the fact that Joe Flacco threw 11 interceptions. My issue isn't that people appreciate Joe Flacco. I appreciate the hell out of what Joe Flacco was able to do for the Cleveland Browns. My issue with how the Joe Flacco thing gets talked about is people keep wanting to take the context out of it, right? We were excited about Joe Flacco, not because he was giving us franchise level quarterback play, but because he was giving you better quarterback play than you would expect given the situation that the Cleveland Browns were in and the situation that Joe Flacco was in. Like, it was above what you could reasonably expect out of a street free agent that's 39 years old. But what I mean when people take the context out is when people say, oh, well, he was better or this or that. And I just don't think if you had Joe Flacco for 17 games, you would walk out thinking that he was better than Deshaun Watson. But that comes down to how expectations play with how we feel about how a player performs, right? I talk about this all the time. The journey matters more than a lot of people would like to admit when it comes to how they view a season. You can go 10-6 and you can be furious about a 10-6 season. You can go 10-6 and be excited. You can go 9. Well, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck in 16 game world. You can go 10-7 and be furious about it. And then there's some years you can go 9-8 and be thrilled. It's all about how you get there. It's all about the journey on how you feel here. It's why I always caution people when they make these these schedule videos and they take them super seriously and they try to predict the Browns record and they say, I'm going to hold them to this all season. It's impossible to do that because the journey is going to dictate how you feel about everything. Like, going into last season, we expected the Browns to be a 10-12 win team. They got to 11 wins and we were more thrilled about those 11 wins than maybe we would have been if we got to 12 with a healthy Deshaun Watson, because of how you got to those 12 wins. And that's the similar thing with Joe Flacco. Was he the greatest quarterback in the world? No. Did he play objectively great? No. He was okay. But we weren't in a position where we thought we were going to get okay at quarterback after going through PJ Walker, Deshaun Watson, and DTR, which is why people appreciate that. So, you know, there's two just totally different situations, and I wish people would stop comparing Joe Flacco and Deshaun Watson. It's just not a fair comp for either guy. It's not fair to Joe Flacco to compare him to Deshaun Watson, because they're in two different parts of their career. They're getting paid two different levels of salary, and the expectations for them are different. Like Joe Flacco is a backup right now for the Indianapolis Colts. And it's not fair to compare Joe Flacco and how we felt about Joe Flacco to Deshaun Watson, because Joe Flacco had no bar to clear. Deshaun Watson has to be the best quarterback in franchise history for people to accept that, like, that contract was worth it. And that's kind of a fair bar on where the bar is for Deshaun Watson, right? Like they risked that much to get him. So it is what it is. But yeah, that's why I think people have a different or have a different mindset about how Joe Flacco played versus how Deshaun Watson played. It's the context that really dominates that entire conversation. And I feel like people throw that shit out too easily when that's the most important thing in that conversation. Gunn says, really enjoyed that Watson vid. How do you feel about Juan Thornhill? Twitter is giving him the JJ3 stigma. I believe he's going to play well this season with that calf injury. Also, you think the strength of the team is, I think it's a tie at D-line and secondary. Hey, man, when it comes to social media, and look, no disrespect to anybody who loves social media, when it comes to social media, I have to say this. You got to take everything you hear about offensive linemen and safeties with a massive grain of salt. Unless they're like somebody who really does this, you got to take what they say about those two positions with a massive grain of salt, because, like, one, people just don't understand the offensive line. They don't know what a win or loss on the offensive line looks like. They don't understand the offensive lineman job. Like, I've heard a lot of bad takes about offensive line play on Twitter. And then, like, somebody like Mitchell Schwartz would be like, hey, y'all are wrong on this. And then people will argue with Mitchell Schwartz and Joe Thomas and be like, no, you're wrong. All pro Joe Thomas, Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, Hall of Famer tackle. People don't know what they talk about when it comes to offensive line on Twitter. And it's the same way with safeties, because what ends up happening with safeties is that they are the last line of defense, which means if anything breaks down, they're going to be the dude in frame running after the guy who just got the big ass play, which means in everybody's mind, because not everybody watches all 22. Not everybody understands the delicate intricacies of safety play, and that's fine. So when you watch the game and you looking on TV and you just see number one just trailing behind, so you gonna blame him for what happened. It's usually not that person's fault. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. John Johnson is the rare case where the Twitter hate for him was very warranted because he just wasn't very good in Cleveland. And I don't think he's really resurfaced after this. So back to Juan Thornhill, right? That's my disclaimer on Twitter conversations about those two positions. Like, if there are two positions that people know the least about on Twitter, but talk the most about, safeties, offensive line. So take those conversations with a grain of salt. Hell, even take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Now, with Juan Thornhill, I think Juan Thornhill is significantly better than John Johnson III. Like, I think anybody who's saying he's just as good as John, that's misinformed. He is really good in run support. He has made some plays, especially tackling, stopping first downs from being completed in critical red zone situations. As I do my rewatch, I get more of an appreciation for Juan Thornhill. And this is something I'm going to talk about in my week 11 Browns rewatch video that's going to come out next week, not this week, because I've been super busy this week with life stuff. So I'm not going to be able to release that the way I wanted to. So I'm going to wait a week to drop that. But one of the things I've noticed is just how different the Browns are when they have their full complement of defensive backs and Juan Thornhill is in there. Like, they're such a different team, and Juan does a lot of stuff in run support that I think has been super helpful. He's not the biggest playmaker in the world, but he does cut off a lot of big plays from happening too. So yeah, Juan's probably getting a raw deal, but like, that's just gonna happen. Like, Twitter with every team picks a tackle or a guard or a safety to pick on. And it's because those are easy positions to blame. And since a lot of people don't really understand those positions that well, it's real easy to get people to be like, yeah, you're right, I do think that. And that's the kind of shit that goes hard on Twitter. If I'm just being honest with you. Trent says, can you talk a little bit more about how you feel about the linebacker room is going to be this season? I feel like JOK is our X factor, but I'm scared of missing Taki. Yeah, man, as I do the rewatch of the Browns season, I realize more and more how important Taki was. Now, I don't know what the Browns plan is to replace him. I think they brought in Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks is going to kind of do what Taki and Anthony Walker did, because Taki wasn't just the Sam linebacker. He also played a lot of Mike linebacker, right? Especially when Anthony Walker got hurt at some point during the middle of the season last year, like everybody else on the team did. But yeah, Taki is going to be a serious replacement. Now, Jordan Hicks is a serious replacement, so I don't think that they didn't think about replacing Taki. I do think Jordan Hicks is a huge part of that equation. The question is like, okay, who's going to take over as Sam, and how important is that Sam linebacker role going to be? Is it just going to be 15, 16 snaps a game, or is it going to be a full-time starting role? I find it hard to imagine right now that it's going to be a full-time starting role for a Sam linebacker, given that they haven't really invested that much in it. And I'm thinking the Browns are trying to start Devin Bush or Nathaniel Watson this early or in 2024. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, Jordan Hicks, I want to do a video about Jordan Hicks. I've been looking at film for him. That's going to be coming up soon. But yeah, Jordan Hicks is the solution for Sione Taki. We will see if that solution is sufficient during the season. D-Lit Exchange Jackson says, is there any truth to the rumors about trading for Aiyuk? What would it cost? And if we did get him, can he be a one, or did he look like that the past season with the focus on Debo? So one, do I think these Aiyuk rumors are true? No, I don't. I think it's June right now. And whenever something like a contract holdout happens, people just make shit up. Like, I wish there was a more elegant way for me to put this. And look, these aren't reporters that are making this up or people who are putting their names on it. These are aggregate accounts like NFL News Rumors, or you know the type if you on Twitter. They just make shit up, and they make shit up because they want stuff to get engagement. And when you make shit up, people engage with it. And then some people pick it up and make videos about it, or because they want it. It's June. It's hard to make football stuff out here. So if you give people an inch, they're going to run a mile. And this is another example of this. I don't think there's a realistic chance of the Browns trading Amari Cooper for Brandon Aiyuk. It's something that, like, if it were on the table, they would consider. And Brandon Aiyuk is available. But I think they're more focused on getting a deal done with Amari Cooper. I don't think the 2 years of guaranteed money that Amari Cooper has is like a deal breaker. I just think they want to tinker with how to structure it, right? So we'll see what happens with Coop, but I highly, highly doubt that they're going to be trading for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, let's live in a hypothetical world where those rumors are credible and worth talking about. Would Brandon Aiyuk be a number one wide receiver? Absolutely. Go look at Brandon Ayuk's numbers over the last couple of years versus Deebo Samuel's numbers over the last couple of years, and you'll find somebody who's been a little bit more consistent. Similar style to Amari Cooper, right? A great route runner, not somebody who's going to be a huge 50-50 ball guy, but still somebody who's going to be able to get open, separate, all of that. Yeah, I like Brandon Aiyuk. I think he's a great wide receiver. I think he would fit great in this system. I think him and Deshaun Watson would do great things together. But I think they also feel like there's not that much of a difference between Brandon Aiyuk and Amari Cooper, except for that Brandon Aiyuk is younger. But if the Browns hold up with Amari Cooper, is they aren't trying to extend him. And I think people are getting wrong why the Browns don't want to give him like 4 years on a deal. I think my personal theory, it's just my theory, so take it with whatever you need to take it with. I think the Browns are not as willing to give 4 years on this contract or 3 years on this contract or go past 2026 or into 2026 because they need to stay flexible, right? They got a lot of stuff going on in 2026. You got Miles coming up, Denzel Ward coming up, Deshaun Watson might be coming up for an extension. You got to decide whether you want to do that. I find it hard to believe that they're in a spot where they are definitive about whether they're going to give Deshaun Watson an extension at this point. Maybe they're leaning one way or the other, and it's probably more in the direction of giving him the extension, given what they have given up for him. But still, if they're the smart organization I say they are, they're not going to be gung-ho, we're set on that extension. They're going to keep their options open. And I think that's more what this year's thing is about than anything. It's not about the age that Amari Cooper is. I know somebody has a question in here about how well Amari Cooper will age, so I'll save most of this analysis for that. But I think Amari Cooper, you give him a 2-3 year deal, he's going to be good in 2-3 years. He's aged. He's lost his speed already. He's not 4.4 fast anymore. He's definitely running a 4.6 out there, but he's better than he's ever been right now. So I don't think it matters. I think he's going to age well. I think he's that good of a technician, and I think he's gotten stronger, and I think that plays better to how he plays. So I just don't see the reason to go from Amari Cooper to Brandon Aiyuk just because he's younger, because I don't think the Browns would want to give Brandon Aiyuk a 4-year deal, right? Like, I don't think they would want to commit to him for super long term. And I think that's just the situation they're in. I think, to me, it makes more sense that the Browns wait it out with Amari Cooper, try to find a deal they could both be happy with, and then get something done. And I think that will happen, hopefully, before training camp. But I wouldn't be surprised if it dips past that first week of training camp and they wait until they back in Berea to really get something really figured out. I think a lot of this timeline with Amari Cooper and when he comes back to the team, reports to practice, is going to be kind of adjacent. And this is just, again, my own personal theory. But I think it's adjacent, or going to be adjacent, with Deshaun Watson and like his availability during practice. Like, if we start camp in late July and Deshaun Watson is throwing full go, Amari Cooper will probably be there. I think he wants to win. He sees the opportunity. He'll be there, but we'll see. It's a lot that has to go down. But thank you for that question, D-Lit. CBB Dynasty BK. Oh, that just reminds me, that college football coming out, man. Oh, y'all about to lose me. I don't know. If the Browns don't re-sign Amari, do you trust the front office to draft a wide receiver early? Yeah. Because I think people look at this whole wide receiver thing wrong, because we're judging the Browns' ability to draft wide receivers by what they do in day 3 of the draft. And, well, day 2 was Anthony Schwartz, at least, and Cedric Tillman. And Cedric Tillman's in his 2nd year. So we're really judging what the Browns have done over a short period of time and over day 2 picks. Now, the Anthony Schwartz pick was not great, but I'm not going to paint my judgment of the front office's ability to draft by one failed prospect that they selected, especially when a lot of y'all like that pick. But it's with the Browns front office's ability to draft a wide receiver, I don't really look at it like that. The way you phrase it, I look at it like, do I trust the Browns with the first round pick? Right? And I do. When you look at the Browns first round picks, they've gotten starters out of all of their first round picks. They've only had 2, but they've gotten starters out their first round picks. So if the Browns like a wide receiver enough to take them in the first round, I trust that judgment that wide receiver is going to be at least the starter in the first round. Because I don't think the issue is that they are good at certain positions, scouting, and bad at other positions. I think it's just where you take those positions, where you spend those resources to get better at the position. It don't matter what position you're selecting. If you're consistently selecting this position exclusively in day 3 of the draft, you're probably not going to have that great of a hit rate compared to a position that you're selecting in day 1. Because the quality of prospect is much higher on day 1. So I think that has a lot more to do with it than just the Browns not being good or being good at drafting a specific position. But thank you for the question. Trippy says, what is the best and worst case scenario for how Amari Cooper's play style affects him as he gets older? I think we get an old Amari Cooper, right? We've gotten old Amari Cooper for the last 2 years. He has not had breakaway speed his entire time in the city of Cleveland. It has not mattered, right? Like the last 2 years is basically what Amari Cooper's going to be like until he gets too old to play football. I think he's going to be like that till he's like 33, 34. To be honest with you, he's lost the speed that he used to have as a youngin. He's adjusted already. This is Amari Cooper until he is truly cooked. And I don't think he's truly cooked or even close to truly cooked yet. So if you're wondering what Amari Cooper's going to look like as he gets older, dog, you're watching it. This is what older Amari Cooper looks like. And this is probably what it's going to look like until he's truly cooked in probably like 33, 34 is when you get truly cooked. Like Julio Jones was pretty cooked by 33, 34. And Amari Cooper right now is 30 or 29, 30, somewhere close to that. So, yeah, he got about 2-3 years left, I think. And he'll look like this. And this has quietly been the best version of Amari Cooper we've seen. Just saying. So yeah, I'm not really tripping on the age. People, every time a contract gets involved, people just get so worried about the age with the player. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it matters as much as people make it out to be. And I think you also have to consider who we are talking about. And I think that's the issue, right? We do a lot of this analysis about the age of a player based on the average of most NFL players. And if we were talking about Rashad Higgins or some like bone stock average NFL wide receiver, I'd be with you. But Amari Cooper has always been an outlier, right? And you got to treat outliers like outliers. And I think when we focus so much on the statistical averages of the NFL, we fail to recognize that some people are just outliers. And the people that are outliers are usually the people we're talking about, because the outliers are usually the ones worth talking about. So it's a question of, are these averages really as useful as we think they are for the players that we spend the most time talking about? Again, for the bulk of players that we don't talk about, the average guys, yeah, those numbers probably hit at a regular rate. But, you know, when the guys that we're talking about aren't average, they're outliers. And I do think we need to consider that a little bit more when we talk about some of these things that are based off of league averages. But that's it for Q&A today. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.